Hi, Sam Roberts here from Roberts Geospatial. Today I want to show you some Landsat data over a period of almost 50 years and trace the history of bauxite mining operations that are occurring in the Jarrah Forests that are to the southeast of Perth in Western Australia. So there was an article in the paper a little while ago. It was in the Weekend Australian from August the 13th, 2022. It's called Undermined. Here it is. And it was by Victoria Laurie. So I can't point you towards that article because it's all behind the News Limited paywall. But in this article, there was a discussion about aluminium mining or bauxite mining in Western Australia. And I think one of the people that she interviewed made an interesting point that really resonated with me, which is that probably most people in Perth don't know that this is even happening. And I think that that's true of a lot of mining operations all around Australia. People just simply don't understand the scale of these operations. They just don't know about it. And so I wanted to take a look at it and see what the scale of that operation is, see how it's changed over the years, and see how it's accelerated in the last 10 years or so. So mining in Australia, it used to be a fairly localized thing. You'd dig a hole in the ground. It'd usually be underground, and of course the waste would come out, but it would all be fairly localized. And I think people have that picture in their head about mining. But over the last 30 or 40 years, that's radically changed in Australia. We've gone through a series of massive mining booms, which have propped up the entire country economically. I mean, the purpose of this talk is not to bash the mining industry or these particular companies that we're going to discuss, but it's changed from being a hole in the ground to being operations that destroy entire landscapes that have big impacts on local biodiversity and the environment locally. So we're talking about coal mining, where it's gone from underground operations to massive pits. We're talking about iron ore mining, for example, up in the Pilbara and the Hamersley, where these operations are just vast in scale. I mean, you can go up there and say, "Hey, there used to be a mountain there." Well, that mountain's in China now. They've completely eliminated entire landscapes. Aluminium mining is another one. So this is for bauxite, which is a strip mining operation and tends to operate over large areas. You could probably put mineral sands extraction into the same kind of boat. It's a strip mining operation. And of course, mineral sands produce your paint, titanium dioxide, which you can use, to paint your renovated house in, shades of greige and whatnot. And so a lot of these things are a bit hidden from the public eye, and a lot of that is deliberate and entirely reasonable to do so. Companies put up sort of green walls around their operations, so there's trees. You drive along the road, you just see lots of nice trees. You don't realize that 200 meters past those trees there's an incredible moonscape, a giant pit that you actually can't see. So you can almost live in some of these areas. For example, in the Hunter Valley, you can drive around and live in the Hunter Valley and kind of not really realize that the whole goddamn place has been dug up for coal. And anyway, in this article, they made this point about the residents of Perth, and I used to live in Perth, and I didn't really know about it. It wasn't really front and centre in my mind, so I thought I'd investigate it and just have a look at how these operations have changed over time. So let's have a look at, this is MapInfo running here, just looking at big maps. So this is the southwest of Western Australia, and you can see that you've got these forests down here. These are Karri forests, and then up here we have Jarrah Forests, and this is the area that we're interested in. So just zoom in a bit. Here's Perth, Perth sits on this sand on the west coast, and then there's an escarpment, and in the hills you get these Jarrah Forests out to the back of Perth. And the aluminium or bauxite mining operations have been going on in these forests now since the early 60s, and the mining lease was granted in 1961 apparently. So let's just turn it on. So here's the primary tenement. I'm going to be mainly talking about Alcoa, which operates in this tenement. So this is their mining tenement. You can see that it goes from right up next to Perth. Here's the city right here. Covers all of these Jarrah forests right down to the south. But if I turn on this second polygon, here's the bauxite mineralisation. So let's just zoom in a little bit more. You can see that the northern part of that tenement is not mineralised, and neither is the southern part. So you've just got this section in the middle, and that comes out here. There's a second tenement out here, which is operated by South 32, and they're mining in that area. We'll talk about that too. So just some facts. This tenement here has an area of 7,129 square kilometres. The area of mineralisation is about 4,300 square kilometres, and so the intersection of those areas is about 3,912 square kilometres, which represents about 55% of the mining lease. So mining operations started in the 1960s. I think the lease was granted in 1961. So we're going to look at 3 operations. 2 are operated by Alcoa, and 1 by South 32. So South 32 has the Worsley alumina mine and refinery. So they're mining over in this area, and there are refineries over here. And then Alcoa has a refinery up this end and a refinery here. So we've got the Huntley bauxite mine in this area, with the Pinjarra refinery, and then the Kwinana refineries out here on the coast. And then down here we have the Wagerup refinery, and this is the Willowdale mine in this area. All right, so let's bring up the satellite data. So I'm using new software that I'm writing called ProRaster Scientific. So we're going to look at data from 1974, which is Landsat 1, right through to 2022, which is Landsat 8. So here we're looking at Landsat 8, and we're looking at natural colour. So just kind of natural coloration. So let's start at the top here. You can see the alumina refinery here. So this would be the Pinjarra refinery, and just zooming in a bit, you can see these dead straight lines that go out to the areas where they're mining, and you can see all these areas amongst this green forest where they've been mining, and they're all the brown areas. So these access roads are conveyor belts. So I think that the ore comes into probably this area here. I think they've got a big crusher. They crush it all up and then stick it on the conveyor belt, and it gets shipped over here to the refinery, where the bauxite is turned into alumina, which is just another oxide of aluminium or silicate, perhaps, I'm not sure. And it produces a waste product called bauxite residue. And I guess that all gets stored here at the site, and then the alumina is shipped off and then has to be smelted. And of course, we know that's a energy-intensive process where it gets smelted down to aluminium. So this is the first mine to the north, and you can see that Perth is just up here. So this is the southern boundary of the city here, and not far away are these mining operations. So just go down a little bit further to the south. You see the second Alcoa refinery operation, and again you've got your conveyor belts going out into the bush, and then there's the mining operations out here in the bush. So that's be the Wagerup refinery, and this one out here is the Willowdale mine. And then further down to the south, here is the Worsley, or the South 32 operation. So you've got your Worsley refinery, and just zoom out a little bit, put that in the corner perhaps. You can see you have this long conveyor belt operation. They have a second mining tenement, and that's out here to the east of the Alcoa tenement. And here's the areas that they're mining, this area here and this area up here. And just looking around elsewhere in these Jarrah forests, you can see there's a big mine here. That's the Boddington gold mine, and that would be their tailings dam, I suppose. And then further down here, near to the Worsley operation, you'll find the Collie coal mine. And if we keep going down a little bit further to the south, there's another operation down here. This is a lithium mine. And so this is sort of the mines of the future. They want to mine lithium and other rare earths and so forth, so that they can build everybody an EV and save the planet. All right, so let me go to my controls over here. So let's go right back to the start. So this is 1974. So this is Landsat 1. So this is MSS instrument, so it's not a TM instrument, so we don't have blue and whatnot channels, so we get a completely different coloration. But even so, we can see what's going on. So here's the Alcoa mine just starting up. So here's the refinery under construction or operating in 1974. Remembering the lease was from the early 60s, so they've probably got that up and running, and you can see that mining operations have started out here in the forest, and they already have their conveyor belt. But elsewhere, no operations. The Worsley operation is not up and going, and the other Alcoa operation down here doesn't exist yet. So that's 1974. And then we jump to 1980. So these scenes, I've tried to get one kind of every year, except for the 70s and 80s and 90s. And I've chosen cloud-free scenes, and they're all sort of from late summer. So I've tried to get them all around the same time. It's amazing how hard it is to achieve that. So here's 1980. So you can see that this operation is starting to ramp up. There's been mining down here, out here. It's starting to spread. Also, this second refinery is up and running by 1980, and is starting its mining operations, and I think still no sign of the Worsley operation. Oh, sorry, I got a bit confused there. Here's their mining areas. No sign yet of the Worsley operation in 1980. 1984. So 1984, bingo! They've put in the Worsley operation. Here's the refinery. Here's where they're mining. Here's where they're conveying the ore right across. And if we look at our operations up here, you can see that mining is spreading out into the forest, and up here they're going further south and further north. 1988. So now we go past our Landsat 1, 2 and 3, and we're into Landsat 4 and 5. So they've got a TM instrument, so now we're able to get real colour. And you can see that mining operation here is expanding, as you'd expect. Over here, you can see the workings, and you can see the workings on this one expanding into the bush. Next one, 1989. It's just gone forward a bit, and then we jump to 1992. And you can see the Worsley operation is getting bigger. And you can see this operation in particular, the Alcoa operation, has started to move into this northern area. And over time, we'll see it come all the way up here. 1995 gets bigger. 1998. One thing to keep an eye on as you look through these images is also bushfires. So we'll just keep an eye out for bushfire scars. You can see these operations are getting progressively bigger. And then jump to 2004. There's a real gap there from the late 90s through the early noughties. But you can see that mining has continued apace. They've opened up this new field. This is expanding, and these operations have expanded considerably. You also see that the Boddington gold mine is getting up and running by this stage in 2004. 2005. Further progression, 2006. Here you can see a nice fire scar going all the way through there. What's interesting about these operations, Alcoa, I think, are very good at rehabilitating their mining operations. So they strip mine. I mean, this is what happens. They cut down all of the forest. They strip off all the topsoil and store that. Then they strip out all the bauxite, crush it up and ship that away. Then they replace the topsoil and rehabilitate and plant seedlings and so forth. But then, along comes a fire and burns out half of the area that they've rehabilitated. I think this is a fairly common event. Not sure what impact that has on their rehabilitation efforts, but you can see those fires year after year taking out large areas. Here's another one here in 2007. So continuing to flip forward. We just see a continuing progression of expansion of these mining areas. And 2009 now, 2010. And at this point, we get a bit of a gap in our coverage because Landsat 7 failed in 2003, and there's a bit of a gap between the failure of Landsat 7, even though it kept operating, it's got this scanline failure, and the beginning of Landsat 8. So in 2012, for example, I'm forced to use the Landsat 7 data that has this scanline problem, and you can see all these gaps in coverage in the data. And I think that continues to the next one as well, 2013. Another Landsat 7 scene. And after that, we should get into Landsat 8. So now this is a modern instrument. And you can see now that mining has shifted all the way up north, and there's a real expansion in the area that is being mined in 2015 now. Same down here, huge expansion. This one is from late 2015. More bushfires actually burning through the area that they've been mining. 2017. We have to keep dragging down because they keep pushing up north. It's amazing that they mine right around these reservoirs. I mean, Perth is one of the driest cities in the world, and they allow strip mining in the immediate vicinities of their reservoirs. God only knows why. 2019 now. And let's just jump ahead to 2022. So there's our final one. All right, so you can see this has come all the way north, but it started down here. It moved out through all of this and came right out here, and the same with this. and this has now covered all this area and all of this area. So the next thing that I did was draw some polygons around all these mining areas. So I took that into MapInfo and went through each year and drew a polygon around the areas that are getting mined, and then I just merged all those polygons into one. So let's take a look at that in MapInfo. So we've got our tenement and our mineralisation there. So I'll turn on these polygons. So you can see this. Here's our purple is the combined areas of mining that I've done. Now, this is not a scientific exercise, right? I've just gone around quickly. I've put a bit of buffer around everything because I think that, you know, the effects of the mining doesn't stop right where you stop cutting down trees. There's going to be incidental effects around it. So this is the Worsley operations. Here's the Alcoa operations in the Willowdale, and up here is the Alcoa operations in the Huntley mine. So I'll turn that tenement off, turn that mineralisation off. So how does it all add up? Let me go to my numbers here. So Alcoa says that that they've cleared about 4% of their lease, which winds up to about 285 square kilometres. And they say that they expect to clear less than 8% of their mineral lease in total by the time that they finish operating. But my numbers come out slightly differently. I mean, the first thing I would say is that only half of the lease is mineralised anyway. So when they're talking about 4% of the lease, they're really talking about 8% of the mineralised area. So my numbers here on Worsley, we have a total area of 86.75 square kilometres mined. And then this Willowdale area, I've got 129.3 square kilometres mined. And in this Huntley mine, I've got 361.4 square kilometres mined. So that's the area of those polygons that I picked. So the total area for Alcoa is 490.7 square kilometres. Now, the company, according to this article, officially declared in December 2019 that they had cleared 311.7 square kilometres. So my number of 490 it's in the ballpark. They probably, I mean, I'm including 2019, 20 through to 22. So obviously there's been additional mining since 2019. Also, I've got a little bit of a buffer around, which they're probably not counting. So my estimate is that the area of forest that's been impacted is probably 50% higher than what the company is stating. And whereas the environmental movement will say it's 2 or 3 times higher, but my estimate is about 50% higher. So the other thing that I wanted to get out of this was to find out whether or not you could use contemporary satellite data and look at an index, vegetation index, like Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, NDVI, and see if you can see the historical mining operations in the vegetation index. So let me come back to this one. Let's just go to the vegetation index, got that here. So it's all computed in real time, so that's why it sort of comes in a little bit slowly. But so we've got our natural colour underneath, and then this greeny, yellowy colour, bluey colour, this is the vegetation index. And you can see that and I've clipped it to a certain level, and that basically matches the boundaries of the forest, so it picks out the forest pretty well. The question is, can you see any difference in this vegetation index from these areas, for example, that have been mined to these areas like here, for example, that have not been mined? So if we go back into MapInfo, let me see, turn on this NDVI layer. So, and we can probably turn off that Bing. So here's our, let's zoom in, NDVI. So here's our mine polygon. This is the Worsley operation. You can see that most of it has not been rehabilitated, but there's some areas that have. Over here, let's just look up in this northern area. So these areas, click on that, these areas have all been mined in the past, well in the past, and they're now being rehabilitated. And if anything, I would say that the NDVI signal is actually stronger in these rehabilitated areas than it is out here in undisturbed Jarrah Forest. That might have something to do with the species that they're planting in their rehabilitation. Apparently before 1988 they weren't planting indigenous species. They're probably using fast-growing eastern states eucalypt species. So that might give a higher signal. Up here I can't really say anything definitive. So look, my conclusion from that is that you can't use those vegetation indexes to see the effect of the historical mining operations. So you have to go back in time and actually look at the operations as they occur in order to see that area that's been affected. Anyway, that's bauxite mining in Western Australia. As you can see, it's right out the back of Perth, which is the capital of Western Australia, and as stated in that article, I think people don't really know what's going on, but it is an extraordinary operation, very large, and is disturbing very large areas of Jarrah Forests. So I could have called this talk, how to build an EV from Jarrah, because that's effectively what happens. You're mining these aluminium in order to build things like aircraft and electric cars and so forth, and the victims are the old growth Jarrah forests. So thanks for watching.